then, Bill, and away we go.
Yeah, Chair, just one question. Louise, I'm assuming that your colleague has given you permission to speak on her behalf, and also it might just be a good idea to check that if the applicant has any issue with that. I don't think there should be, but all the same, just to get it procedurally out of the way.
Yeah, your microphone, Louise.
Yes. Yeah. Give me a time. Give me a minute. Yes, I have the authority. I am the academic head of the tuition centre. So when Mrs. Cothica's not present, then I speak in her stead always.
Okay.
My name's Paddy Were. I'm the solicitor for the applicant. I don't seem to be able to switch my camera on at the moment, but I'm hoping you can hear me. I have no issues at all with that being the case. It's not a problem from my perspective.
Much obliged.
Okay.
Thank you both.
Right, so we can move on then. Right. Right, members of the public are reminded that the agenda and all the... I've got somebody with a microphone on, I think. Right. Members of the public are reminded that the agenda and all the reports being considered by the panel today can be found on the council website under the licensing panel meetings page. So if you want to see them, that's where to look. I also want to make sure that all members have seen the agenda and reports. And I know they have because we've talked about it in a meeting prior to this one. So, right, I would like to remind members of the need to hear all of the evidence in each report we're considering tonight. This means that you should listen to the whole debate. Please don't pop out to make tea or walk the dog. This is a legal requirement. If you should find you're having technical problems and need to log out of the meeting and come back in again, please let me know immediately that you are aware by turning on your microphone and letting me know. This would be a permitted interruption. We can then decide how far we need to recap if that's necessary. And as we've only got one item on the agenda, we can't rule you out of voting. So we'll have to probably recap. Finally, I would say to any member of the public listening or watching, thank you for joining us this afternoon. We hope this meeting will go well, but any virtual meetings may suffer from unexpected technical hitches. So please bear with us. I should also clarify that this meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the council's YouTube channel in the next few days. Contributors to the meeting are asked to remember that they will therefore be included in the recording of this public meeting, and we must all watch our language. Thank you. And now move on to the first to the agenda item. This afternoon's application is an application for a premises licence under the Gambling Act 2005 for Chongy Entertainment Limited at Neil's Corner, Hounslow. Where we need to time contributions, I will ask the legal officer to alert me when allocated times have been reached. I will also ask her to alert me prior to the guillotine being reached if we'd not concluded the meeting by that time. I'm thinking that I'm quite happy with 10 minutes for the applicants and 10 minutes for the objectors in terms of times, and we'll see how it goes from there. So you all right with that, Rita?
Yeah, Councillor, that's fine.
Okay. May I remind all members, officers and public speakers at this meeting to introduce themselves each time they speak, also to turn off their microphones when they finish speaking. It's also important to speak slowly and clearly so that everyone can understand what you're saying. Finally, if you are making a reference to any agenda documentation, please give the page and paragraph details. Right. The process for an application with speakers is as follows. Stage 1, the officer introduction and confirmation of the facts. The officer to give their presentation on the application. The application will then be asked if they agree with the circumstances described in the officer's report. This is not the time for debate at this stage. It's just to agree the procedures. There are no police And I don't think there are a licensing authority or other bodies. Can you correct me on that, Bill, if I'm wrong?
Sorry, Chair, had my microphone switched off. No, that's correct. There are no other licensing officers this evening, Chair.
Okay, right, fine. Right, so stage 3 will be inviting the applicant to speak for 10 minutes in total and answer questions from all other parties, and then answer questions to all other parties. There'll then be questions of the applicants. Stage 4, other persons. Next, we ask the other persons to explain their submissions. By other persons, we mean objectors here, I think. I don't think there's anybody who's coming along to not to be an objector. And they will also be given 10 minutes to speak. If there appears to be 2 of the objectors, is it Louise and Jalak? Is that Jalak? You're an objector as well, aren't you, Jalak?
Yes, that's right.
Well, technically, I should split the 10 minutes into 2 sets of 5 minutes, or I doubt whether you've had the time or opportunity to talk to each other about how you'd split it, but we'll be fairly loose on how we do this. But at the same time, I do need to move on with the business when we get to it. So when we get there, if you could bear in mind that basically what we're saying is that both the objectors have 5 minutes each to put their case. Stage 5, I will then invite all the parties to sum up their positions, with the applicant being entitled to the last word, with their summing up being the last to take place. The panel will then leave the meeting to discuss the case and reach its decisions. It will be joined by no one else except the legal officers. The legal officer who's there to give advice on the law, but will not be a party to the decision. There's also the legal assistant to the officer who would not be taking part in the deliberations, but there just to observe. Once we've done that, we will return to this meeting to read out a decision on the application, and that will conclude the consideration of the item. We therefore now begin the formal hearing of this case, and I will start by inviting the licensing officer to introduce the report. Rita, would you like to introduce the report?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Members are requested to determine an application for a premises licence in respect of Chongy Entertainment Limited, parts of Neil's Corner, 1 to 5 Staines Road and 2 to 6 Bath Road, Hounslow. The application has been submitted by Chongy Limited for an adult gaming centre. The application, the plan and supporting documents have been attached as Appendix A, which is page 8 to 31. The applicants did further submit supporting documents, which were all circulated to members and the objectors. The application attracted 2 representations from interested parties. These have been attached on page 32 and 33. The application was advertised and all the procedures were followed correctly. That's it, Councillor.
Thank you, Rita. Can I now ask the applicant to state if they agree with the circumstances of the officer's report?
I do, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right. So there's no one for police licence body. We cross through those. Move on. Right. Let's get ourselves round. So now I'd move to the. I'll now move on to item 3, which is the applicant's case. So I now ask the applicant to state their name and address and give their reasons for their application. I also remind you that it may only speak for a total of 10 minutes. So now it's up to the applicant.
Chair, thank you. My name's Paddy Ware. I'm a licensing lawyer I've represented the company since applying for its operating license before the Gambling Commission. I'll be making this application for the premises license. We have Dobromir, who is the operating director, with us, and also Joe, who's in charge of compliance, should you have any direct questions of the two of them. Chair, members of the panel, there's an awful lot of paper here, but I'm going to ask you, if I may, for you to just refer to pages 46 to 52 of your bundle, which is my case outline. I've just tried again with my camera. It doesn't seem to be working, but that might be an advantage for you guys not having to see me. But if I can refer, please, to pages 46 to 52, which I'm trying to assist the committee with. And at paragraph 1 of that document, it's just setting out that the company has applied for and been granted an operating license by the Gambling Commission. So many of the supporting documents that you have here before you for this application have been vindicated and given a green light by the Gambling Commission as part of their company's compliance. And that's important because it also deals with one of the licensing objectives of ensuring that gambling is conducted in a fair and open way.
Can I just interrupt you? You said page 46.
Yes.
I'm talking about the agenda, because page 46 is the London Borough of Hounslow's statement of gambling principles.
Right. Well, on the agenda that I've been through, I've got it as my case outline as pages 46 to 52, which is what I've taken off the website. So I don't know how that's happened. It's the case outline document that I wish to refer to. But as I say, it's at 46 to 52 in my bundle. Obviously not in yours.
I don't know what it looks like. Do we know what it looks like? I've got local gambling risk assessments. Is that contained in that document?
No, it's a separate document that says at the top, application for an adult gaming centre premises licence. Then just under that title, it says case outline.
Rita, can you be any assistance on this?
That was the additional documents that were emailed to you on the 4th.
The additional documents.
Yeah, so if you go back to your email, one of the attachments is the case outline.
Hang on, yeah, I know. Which was what? 12 documents, was it?
Yeah, so one of them's actually labelled case outline.
Yeah, well, let me get my members. Are you able to access it, Reed?
Yeah, Chair, it's Mr.
I'm the only
Birdie
one
here,
that hasn't so far.
Chair, it's Mr. Birdie here. Just so you know, I've had a look at the online one, and it looks like a combined bundle has been put together. So page 46 would be the case outline that was sent to all parties as part of the additional documents. And so in the and for Mr. Wer's information, the documents that I think that the panel members and I have has, as the chair said, a copy of the council statement of gambling principles. So it looks like we haven't got the fully all-encompassed version of the bundle.
Right now, yeah. Well, I'm just trying to open the bundle. Let me see. I've got to go into my emails. This is part of the problem when things are sent 2 or 3 days before a meeting to councillors who have other business as well as the committee themselves to deal with. But let me see if I can. What date was this sent? My God, I've got.
Sorry, Councillor, it's that email you forwarded to Councillor Seam this evening.
It was.
Yeah, I know that was about
8th of April.
8th of April.
Friday.
William Lee licensing panel on licensing 8th.
That should be it.
Yeah, I've got lots of them. Extra documents on the April panel.
Chair, I would just say at the moment it's going to be obviously we sent all of this documentation in some time ago, and I've printed off as per your paginated bundle from the council website, it's going to be quite difficult for me to refer to the page numbers that I've got in from your documentation.
From what I understand, the first time we had sight of it was the 8th of April. That's 4 days ago.
That's not when we sent it in, Chair.
I mean, yeah, I mean, this is an awful lot of documents to come in 4 days before a panel hearing. So which document are we actually looking at the moment? As I say, there are 12 documents on here, if I remember rightly.
Case outline. It was quite near the top of mine, I think.
Mr. Verdi here, just for the benefit of all parties.
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah, I've got the.
Yeah, Chair, just to let you know, obviously because this is we're looking at the documents and trying to find that, I have paused the timer, so it's not running into the applicant's 10 minutes. I was
going to say that anyway, but yeah, no, it's just obviously this is a problem, and anyway, but it's a problem we have to deal with. But I don't like receiving documents, and whoever's, you know, whether it's the council's held it up or whether it's late application by the company or the company acting for the applicant. I don't know. But, you know, 4 days covering a weekend, try and get this at a time like it is now, and this is almost impossible to read these documents in this time.
Can I just raise a point at this stage? Obviously, this is an important application for my clients, as it's an important matter for the 2 people who've put objections in. We did send this documentation in advance, and obviously there's been an issue in it getting through to you, and most importantly, I'm going to struggle to refer to the page numbers, which are the page numbers that are on your website for these documents, which is how I downloaded it so that I could make sure that we were all on the same page, and we're not. I'm wondering whether
when you say we're not, I'm reading the document that you sent in, application for adult gaming centre premises license. That's the one you're talking about, isn't it?
It's the case outline, but I also want to refer to a large, not that I want you to look at them at the moment, but I want to refer to a large number of documents and the page numbers that are on your agenda that's been printed on the.
Get that. We've got your documents as sent in as an attachment to this report. So I'm reading your document, which has compliance on page 2. For instance, starts off 370-372 Green Street, Upton Park, London.
Yes, that's the second page of the case outline, but I am concerned that I want to refer to other paginated documents, which are not going to be the same page numbers because I've taken them off the agenda on the website. I don't know whether your legal advice is
sorry, Mr. Work, can I interrupt there? It's Bill, the clerk. Chair and members, the large bundle was sent by Mr. Work after the agenda had gone to print and gone out. I've updated online. I sent them all to you as an email. I've also updated online. If you're able to just go onto the public website and look at the agenda there, all these documents will be paginated as Mr. Were is reading.
Yeah, Chair, if it helps, it's Mr. Verdi here. I can send a link to the document on the chat box for this team.
I'm completely lost now. I have this document that's on my emails received and it's now an addendum to the agenda. It's there as a list of them. Yes? We talk about the same things. This document. See, this is part of.
Yes, Chair. It's on the online agenda, but not the printed one.
No, not the printed one. I'm talking about the one we're online with.
Yes, they're part of that.
Well, no, it's right. What I've got is this is down here as an attachment to our minutes, to our reports. I think there's There's 8 of them, isn't there, or is it 12? Got a feeling it might even be 12. Am I talking about the same documents?
Right, sorry, it's Rita here, Councillor. So what you are looking at is the email that Bill sent you, but Bowdit has just said that he can send you the link to the website where you can see the report, same as Paddy sees it, and you can look at the page numbers there.
So which website are we talking about?
Bowdit, will you send over the link?
The council website.
The council site for what? For this meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we've got that, haven't we? That we're on that, because otherwise we wouldn't be working with the meeting, would we? I mean, Jesus wept. This is a problem when applicants send in a whole host of documentation very late on.
Chair, if I could just interject on that, we sent this documentation on the 1st of April. It was received, as I understand it, into your office. I think that's certainly in the timeframes which the gambling legislation and regulations ask you to comply with, and we checked on the 1st to make sure it had arrived, and we were told it had. So I don't know why it's taken then a further week to come out to you, but I think the issue is in practical terms at the moment is that I'm looking at what I printed off your website, which is the paginated numbers that I've been referring to, and I do think that this is going to cause some confusion, and wonder whether in all of the circumstances that it might be better for all parties if we have an adjournment to get this resolved, because it's obviously an important case for my clients, obviously an important matter for the 2 objectors, and I'm going to struggle to take everybody through the documentation if you've not got it in the same format that I've printed off your website.
Right. Yeah, sorry, it's Bill the clerk. Can I interject again, Chair? It is in the format that Mr. Were printed it out on the online published version. So if you can go to the online published version, members.
Which is where, Bill? Because I've got emails that have received.
The one published on the website, Chair.
Yeah, Chair, if it helps, it's Mr. Verdi here. I'll send you, the panel members, an email with a link. Unfortunately, the chat function is disabled on this Teams meeting, so I'm just drafting an email. If the Chair wishes to agree with Mr. Verdi's proposal, just a brief, you may want to have a 5-minute adjournment just so you can download the
5-minute adjournment to actually sort this out, because at the moment this is nonsense the way it's going forward, because we're not having proper access and sight of documentation. If we're not, I'm seeing it from different sources and I don't know which I'm looking at. So let's get this adjournment and get this sorted out.
Okay.
All right, so we're adjourned to the outer panel. Yeah,
I've got 3 minutes past 8, so hopefully it shouldn't take much more. Shall we seek to resume by 10 past 8? Is that
okay? Yeah, let's do that. So let's move to the two, Catherine and Medea. Can we move to the other room? Right. Okay. Let's open it up a bit. I'm opening up the screen so as I can read everything. Right. Can you hear me? No?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So, right, we've managed to get these, I don't know how many pages downloaded. But as I say, these all arrived with the members very late. Because of whatever the reason, I've tried to unravel what the reasons were, and I don't know what the reasons are, but it's a fact that we didn't get them to the beginning of this week to be able to read. So it's not, you know, it's not good, but never mind. We'll try and press on with it. So, right, I've forgotten the name of the applicant, Mr.
It's Mr. Wurr, sir.
Is he here? Yeah.
Yeah, yes, I am. For some reason, my camera's still not working, but
Okay.
you can hear me.
Okay, Mr. Worth. Is it Worth or
Wurr, W-H-U-R.
W-H-U-R? Okay. Peter Were. Right. Yeah.
Paddy.
Paddy. Oh, I'll get there in a minute. Paddy Were. Okay. Right. Well, we've got the document in front of us now, which is the document starting on page 46, which I think is your numbering as well, isn't it?
Well, I'm referring to the numbers that I've taken off your website, Chair.
So is that first page 46?
Yes, that I want to refer to.
Thank God for that. Right, okay then. It's up to you.
Chair, thank you.
By the way, we did stop the clock.
Chair, I do, before I start my presentation, just obviously with the difficulties that have been occasioned with the documentation here, inquire whether you feel that you and the committee are comfortable that we can deal with this application in the light of not having seen any of this before, because whilst I appreciate there's an awful lot of documentation here, I don't want to refer to all of it, but there is a lot of documentation which I do feel is relevant. I don't want to put the committee or the objectors under any undue pressure. If you feel that we can make progress, then all well and good, but if you feel that we can't, I wouldn't stand in the way of this matter going to another day to give you the opportunity to look at things properly. It's exactly whatever the committee feels more comfortable with.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm uncomfortable. Now I'm going to talk to my colleagues. How do you feel? Do you feel a deferment would make things easier?
Sorry to interrupt. It's Bill, the clerk here. Just for everybody's information, there is no possibility of this coming back before the election, which would put it back to at least June with a entirely new committee.
I'm happy to go ahead, but obviously if you're not, you're the chair, it's important that you're comfortable.
What about you, dear?
I'm happy for it to go ahead as well. But again, it's up to you, Chair.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and let's see how it pans out. We'll just have to see.
Chair, thank you. What I've set out at the beginning of this document is to give you some comfort as to the quality of this operator. So at paragraph 2, I've listed the 11 licenses that we had when I drafted this. We've now been granted in Hammersmith and Leytonstone as well. So the company has 13 licenses and none of those have been refused. Many of them have gone to committee hearings like this with either responsible authorities, residents or businesses objecting, but the licenses have been granted and there have been no issues since any of those have opened. And the reason behind all of that is because of what I've set out in the compliance section of our supporting documentation. So you can see at paragraphs 3 to 5, initially the company had a gentleman called Byron Evans who prepared all of the documentation that I've sent on to you to support this application. That's now been augmented and looked at again by Jo Corbett, who is here on the call. You can see her experience at paragraph 4. She's very considerably experienced in this sector and has brought all of those documents up to date. She's also completed the local area risk assessment, which is at pages, you don't need to look at this, but it's at pages 16 to 31 of your agenda. You can look at that when you retire if you wish to. The local area risk assessment, taking on board any local issues, and I would put to the licensing committee that that document is again a significantly compelling, it's the best I've seen, local area risk assessment. Chair, when you retire to look at this, I would ask you to look at our compliance documentation very seriously. That's contained on my pagination from your website from page 56 to 125. You don't need to look at all of those documents, but they are documents that deal with the CCTV policy, the knowing your customer policy, money laundering, social responsibility and compliance, staff alarm policy, the supervision policy within the premises, and most importantly, this is all trained through a significantly astute digital training package to all members of staff, and it's really compliance at the highest level in relation to what you would expect from an operator who comes before you to ask for a premises license. I think this is indicative of why all of the applications have been granted and why there haven't been any issues with the premises since they've opened and traded. And again, highlight to you the LARA at pages 16 to 31 of the bundle, the local area risk assessment, which talks about the localized risks. They are a member of the trade body BACTA, and Joe can talk to you about that if you need to, but what that means is, as well as all of our own compliance, BACTA send unannounced visits to test purchase at the premises. So as well as any test purchases that you as a council will carry out, BACTA as the trade organisation will come into the premises and make sure that all of our systems are working properly, and they will test to see whether Challenge 25 is working in relation to children. There are also mystery shopping and venue audits at the premises. So again, I would just highlight that this is significantly at the highest level. Now, AGC premises and the licensing objectives are set out at paragraph 8 and onwards of my document at page 48. So your statutory test is set out in your agenda papers at paragraph 4.4, and you'll be glad to know that none of the issues that have been highlighted by the objectors deal with anything other than, in my respectful submissions, just one of those licensing objectives that you can see at paragraph 8, which is 8C on page 48. So the licensing objective of protecting children and other vulnerable persons from being harmed or exploited by gambling. There are no representations that are raised that deal with either of the other two licensing objectives. And I think it's important to note that none of your responsible authorities, not the police, not the Gambling Commission, the licensing authority, children's services, the ward councillors who were served with this application, no representations from any of those people whatsoever. So you've got comfort of knowing that we are significantly down the journey to satisfying you as to why this license should be granted. And if we go over to page 49 of the documentation, I've just set out in relation to children and vulnerable people, no under 18s are permitted in the premises. There's a prominent Think 25 signage in the premises. And as I've said, that's under the BACTA system. It's tested independently by people who come in unannounced to make sure that we're complying with all of that. And the same with vulnerable people that I've set out at paragraph 14. And again, no issues whatsoever with the other premises that have opened, operating with very similar conditions that we've agreed with your police team. And that, Chair, is a very important consideration. They are the conditions are highlighted at pages 53 to 55 of the bundle, and they are documents that I would ask you to refer to now, if I may, please, page 53 onwards. So the starting point for applications of this nature is that they're granted without any conditions whatsoever. So I think what we would say to you, having looked at the local area risk assessment, worked with the police and your other responsible authorities, we've fine-tuned to 17 conditions, which are is a significant offer. So you can see conditions 1 to 4 on page 53 deal with CCTV. We've got an incident log, but then most important, we come to paragraphs 6, which is in relation to proof of age schemes and not allowing children in the premises at all. No pre-planned single manning at key hours, a maglock on the door so people can't get in until they're checked by a member of staff in the premises before they can open the door and let them in. And what's most important in understanding an AGC is it's not like a bookmaker's shop where the staff are slightly remote behind a counter. The staff walk around the premises, so they'll have a fob on them that they can undo the maglock with. They can see from the CCTV. There's a monitor within the shop so they can see who's wanting to come in. And quite often they will just immediately stop anybody who shouldn't be coming into the premises, whether they are children or whether they are people who've had a drink or anything like that. They'll stop them even getting over the threshold of the premises. So significant training to make sure all of these high levels of due diligence are carried out properly. And I think importantly, paragraph 17, so condition 17 that's offered, is that there will be, as well as any regular interaction with the police, a 6-monthly briefing with them just to make sure that everything is moving in the right direction. Chair, can I take you to paragraph 16 of my case outline, which is at page 50. I think it's important really just to look at this from the perspective of what the legislation says. So it's a different test to the Licensing Act, which I'm sure you will sit on many more Licensing Act applications than you would a Gambling Act application. So it's a deliberately permissive piece of legislation. So section 153 of the Gambling Act is places a mandatory requirement on you as a licensing subcommittee to aim to permit this application. So you only should step away from permitting the application if you are satisfied that the objectors on the civil burden of proof have satisfied you that we won't be reasonably consistent with the licensing objective of, as I've said, protection of children and vulnerable people. And with the greatest of respect to their representations, there's no evidence placed before this committee in their written submissions to suggest that that would be the case. And that's an important feature when you look at some of the documents that we've provided, the Know Your Customer policy at pages 59 to 61, social responsibility and compliance policies at 93 to 119, and critically the Gambling Commission customer interaction document at pages 127 to 140. So these premises will be supervised, they'll be staffed properly. We've worked in conjunction with the police to make sure that they're happy with the conditions that we've offered, they're focused, they're significant, and most importantly, they're in line with your own licensing policy. So when you actually look at the law, we would say that there is nothing here on the statutory test of aiming to permit that should take you away from that position of aiming to permit the application. Can I just very briefly...
So, Chair, it's Mr. Verdi here. Just to let you know, it has been 10 minutes, so you may want to bring the applicant's comments to a close, or unless Mr. Were is summing up now. But it has been 10 minutes.
I've got two very, very brief points to make, which is just about the written representations, which are at pages 32 and 33 of your bundle. And those written representations, I would suggest, and obviously they're going to be spoken to in a moment, are significantly closer to planning objections than they are to relevant representations under the Gambling Act. They're certainly at page 32, I think it's very borderline indeed whether that engages your discretion to refuse under section 153. They're both very much more planning grounds as to what might happen to the building and the impact on the building and their position within it, rather than your discretion as to whether to refuse this application under section 153. So, Chair, those are the only two final points that I wish to make in relation to those representations that have been made.
Right. Sorry, I thought you said there were two things. Was that one or
Sorry,
both?
No, that's both of them. So it's the two representations at pages 32 and 33. That's everything I would wish to say at the moment.
Okay, right. Okay, now I'm going to take questions from my fellow councillors. Karen?
Yeah, I have some questions, please. So my first is, what are the opening hours? Because it isn't clear, but on page 54, it sort of implies that it's 24 hours opening.
Chair, Councillor, yes, the application of the Gambling Act is for what is permitted for an adult gaming centre, which is 24 hours. I'm certain that that will not be something that your planners will consent to. I'm sure that there will be restrictions placed on the planning permission, but it's not, in my respectful submission, a consideration in relation to the gambling application. The Gambling Act and supporting documents sets out that the default position with adult gaming centres is they're permitted to open 24/7 under the gambling legislation, but obviously planning will look at, I think, quite rightly, at what the permitted hours would be.
Okay, no, that's good. It would have been helpful for it to have been a bit clearer, but that's okay. Just a couple of other small details. On page 49, it mentions there'll be no ATM in the premises, but there's actually one about 30 seconds walk away. So that's not really as much benefit as it might sound.
If I could just, sorry, if I could just deal with that point. Obviously, we can't influence what's happening down the street, but we would be permitted in law to have an ATM at the premises, but we don't think it's appropriate, and that's why we're offering not to have one.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I can see a lot of work has gone into these conditions, and you know, it's certainly on paper it looks like, you know, fantastic practice and that. And I guess, you know, most of my concerns are about things that you would call planning things. I think, you know, the position is could be problematic. I think I looked at the local gambling risk assessment. I can see several things in the area that have been missed off, including an addiction recovery community just around the corner from the premises. So, you know, while it looks very comprehensive, there are other things in the area that concern me. And, you know, it's next to Bell Square, where we have children's entertainments. It's very close to a pub. I appreciate that under the Gambling Act, I may not be able to take these into consideration, but I do find it very concerning that while your premises might be very well run internally, the effect on the community is quite serious. You know, we do have people who hang around in the high street at night, and you know, sometimes drink and stuff. It's a difficult area.
Can I just pick through some of those issues?
Yeah, sure, please do.
Yeah, because these are issues that are raised in all of these hearings. Certainly every hearing that I do for an adult gaming centre and for a high street bingo premises, we get the same issues that are raised, and they're rightly raised. I mean, I think it's correct that they should be heard and a considered decision should be made. So a significant amount of what you raised there, quite rightly, I think you've picked up on our planning issues. I think the important thing to deal with is that Section 210 of the Gambling Act says that planning needs to be kept on its own track, and planning issues need to be determined through that process. So we have, rightly or wrongly, whether we like it, whether we disagree with it, a very liberal Gambling Act at the moment, and Section 153 is a permissive piece of legislation. And I think the important thing to point out is that the issues that you've raised are all issues which have been raised in other hearings in the other applications where we've been granted licenses. And in all of those circumstances, we've tried hard to work on the conditions so that they are effective, the management of the premises don't allow children in, and so that they don't have an impact on the licensing objectives. And I think importantly, from an evidential basis, you've got the comfort now of knowing that we've got 13 licenses granted. And if you look at the list of where those are, a lot of them are in pretty impactful areas as well. And certainly I've done all of those applications and heard similar comments from councillors that you have just made as well. Importantly, since we've opened, we've not had any issues, which I think is a really important piece of evidence. So it's right that you've picked up that there might be something missing in the LARA. That's something that Joe will focus on. So the LARA should never be a document that just sits on the shelf and isn't looked at moving forward. It should be a living document. So we did reach out to both of the objectors to see whether we could talk to them. They didn't want to talk to us, but should the license be granted, we would talk to them, we would work with them, and we would work with everybody to ensure that the same as happens elsewhere will happen here, that we will be consistent with the licensing objectives and operate in a way curtailed maybe by planning, rightly, because of some of the things that you've talked about, but we would work on the gambling act side to make sure that we promoted the licensing objectives the same here as we have done elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions for now.
Right, my dear, do you have a question? Questions, sorry.
Well, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. I mean, I echo the sentiments of my fellow councillor Karen Smith. I think she's done a great job to raise some of those concerns with you. My only question really is, I mean, I don't know if you're aware of the recent stabbing that happened outside Club K. I mean, the proximity isn't too far; it's quite close.
Very close.
So some of that might, my concern would be they might feed off into your venue as well. I know it's not something that was caused by yourself, but what is there to suggest that that won't be the case?
Well, I think the important starting point is that the police aren't here to object to this application. They're obviously your statutory advisors on crime and disorder, and I think if they had concerns that we could add to some of those local issues, as has happened with many of my other applications, they would have been here. What I will give you comfort from, councillor, I think, and I think it's a very a good position, is that obviously these premises during the night won't, if they're allowed to open, depending on what your colleagues on the planning situation decide to do with planning, they would be sufficiently manned. They would have an SIA door supervisor of the premises as and when they are needed, something that they would work with the police on that. They have the maglock, so it can't be a situation where people can get into the premises. What's really critical is that, or important, I think, is that something similar to that happened outside our client's premises in Luton. And nothing to do with our premises, again, similar to the issue that you've just talked about. But our CCTV system is so robust and outside the premises as well as in, that it was all captured. This fight that happened on the street with machetes, it was nothing to do with our client's premises, but our CCTV imagery caught all of that, and it was given to the police. And as a result of that, they've managed to conclude their inquiries. So there is, I would respectfully submit, a benefit in having that level of CCTV coverage. It's something that's worked significantly in Luton, but in relation to being a crime generator, I've not seen that happen in any AGC. And it's important, I think, to just differentiate that from other premises. And I think that's why, with the additional conditions that we've offered, the police are very comfortable that there wouldn't be a crime and disorder issue arising if this license were granted.
I mean, with respect to your comment, Mr. Ware, about the Luton example, there aren't any sort of children's tuition centres nearby, for example, in that location. And also there's not that, I think there's another premises as well, dealing with the, you know, like careers advice or something like that. It was on the...
Yeah, I think we're blurring two issues there. I'm more than happy to talk about that and the vulnerability side. In relation to the crime side and the fact that you are alluding to, something happening within the area, the police certainly feel that the security and the CCTV coverage is actually beneficial to this particular part of the building. In relation to the representations that have been raised, quite rightly, that you've referred to at pages 32 and 33, I do, with respect to those submissions, say they are borderline as to whether they're relevant to your discretion under section 153. I think they are significantly relevant in relation to planning. They are planning representations, and they will be dealt with by the planners in relation to the statutory test under planning. But in relation to the statutory test under gambling law, all of our policies that are in place and the management controls at the premises, it can't be seen that we would breach the licensing objective should this license be granted. That's our position, Councillor.
Well, thank you. I mean, my point was the one because you mentioned Luton specifically, so that's why I wanted to address it with relation to today's example. Because the knock-on effect of having children in close proximity would be more substantial than the example that you've mentioned. But thank you for addressing that. Thank you, Chair. That's all from me.
Okay, good, dear. Can I just ask one question? Is there any person present from the or potential person present from the management of this organisation in Hounslow?
Yes.
No management.
Yes, I did highlight at the beginning. We have Dobramir, who is the operations director of the whole of the company, and we have Joe, who is the compliance manager for the company, who deals with all of the training of staff on site and compliance with all of the policy documents that we've sent into you in advance. So they're both here on the Zoom as well.
But there's not anybody who's going to work in this unit.
Well, we at the moment we don't have planning permission or a license, so we wouldn't have gone out to get staff. All of the staff that we get will be senior staff. May well be that when should the license be granted and planning permission be granted, we would move a senior member of staff from another premises until this premises is opened and bedded in. So the director level and the compliance manager are here to deal with any issues, but no, we haven't recruited any staff for these premises yet because we don't have a license.
Yeah, because I'm a bit concerned. I mean, you know, everything that seems to have come up, you seem to counter with the argument, well, that's not really licensing, that's planning. And frankly, you haven't actually convinced me of that. You've just made a statement, and I'm not quite sure that it is. So I mean, you know, I see. Sorry, yeah, go on, carry on.
Well, can I take you to the law section of my case outline? I all I do for my sins is work as a planning or a licensing lawyer, and I look after all premises that need planning permission and licensing to operate either under the Licensing Act or the Gambling Act. Now, the law is set out at paragraph 16 of my document at page 50. That's what generates your discretion today, and it's very different to the Licensing Act. So section 153 of the Gambling Act says that you should aim to permit the application that's before you. It's a mandatory aim to permit.
Sorry, which you said this was, I didn't quite get the impression. I got the impression you're talking about planning.
No, I'm talking about licensing and why the objections that have been raised shouldn't trigger your discretion to refuse this application because they're much closer to.
Can I say, as a member of the licensing committee, one of the most the strongest of all of the things that we have to deal with is protection of the public. And are you telling me that under your application we don't have that authority?
What I'm telling you is that your discretion in relation to the Gambling Act is very tightly constrained as to how you can refuse an application, whether we like it or not.
My question, you're ducking it?
I'm not ducking it. I'm coming on to the point that the issues that have been raised in this application haven't come about in relation to public safety, as I can see. I can't see anything in the representations that suggests that people would be physically put at risk if this license were granted.
No? Oh, right. Sorry, I thought that was what the objections were.
Well, I don't see that. I don't see that they're suggesting that people would physically be put at risk.
Well, it depends what you call physically, I suppose. Right. Okay. So we've asked about hours of opening. Think 25. This is a new thing. You know, we've had our, you know, ones that go for drink about 25 and 21, etc. But what's different about think 25? It seems a bit just catchy to me.
I'm sorry, I don't follow the point.
What does it actually mean?
Well, you can call it Think 25, Challenge 25, whatever you want to call it. But what it means is that anybody who comes into the premises who doesn't look over the age of 25 has to show photographic identification to prove that they're old enough to be in the premises. So it doesn't matter how it's phrased. It basically means that anybody who looks under 25 will be challenged.
Okay, so it's challenge 25. Okay, I mean, I'm more familiar with that. It's just a bit gimmicky. All right. Well, I think that's all of the questions I've got at the moment. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, okay. I mean, when you do your risk assessment, do you take into account what's going on in the surrounding area on a daily basis?
Yeah, yes, the local area risk assessment is a document that was brought into the legislation to do that specific thing. So that's something that will be updated as soon as the premises are open. That it would be updated again. It would be constantly looked at and will be updated to make sure that any changes in the local demographic or any issues that are relevant to the licensing objectives would be retrained. All of that would be put into the local area risk assessment. It's a living document. It shows that everything is being constantly reviewed and looked at. That would be shared with the Gambling Commission if they want to see it, be shared with the local authority, be shared with the police. It's something which is a best practice model.
Okay, so in that risk assessment, would you not take into account other premises that are offering exactly the same product that you're offering?
Yes, we would.
And have you done that in this case in Hounslow?
Yeah, perhaps I could introduce Joe, who drafted the LARA in here. I don't know whether you could just come in and deal with this.
Can you tell me what a LARA is? That doesn't.
Sorry, local. It's the local area risk assessment, which is
right. Okay, so
which is the risk assessment. I wonder if Joe, you could just come in and touch on some of the questions that the chair is asking.
Yeah, with regards to that specific question,
yeah.
We would go around. We walk around the area. Sorry, I've got feedback here. This is dreadful. Around the local area, we look at what's there. We look at schools, addiction centres, any street drinking, that kind of thing. Any kind of risk in the local area that could be exaggerated by our being in the premises.
And you've done this in this case?
Yes.
And you don't find any?
The risks highlighted are in the document that's in your pack. And what I would say is that all of our policies and procedures are designed to minimize that risk.
If I could just touch on that, Chair, so that it's not a question of doing the local area risk assessment and not finding any risks. It's finding what the risks are and mitigating them, which has rippled through to the conditions that we've agreed with the police in relation to the manning levels at the premises, the door being locked. So we've associated the risk, we've looked at the risk through the work that Joe's done, and we've heightened our systems to deal with what any local issues may be. It's not a case that we haven't found any. We have. Those are, as I said at the beginning, in relation to conditions, normally these licenses would be granted without any conditions at all. So 17 conditions highlights the fact that we've looked at the local risk and we've offered those conditions to mitigate those risks.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you're saying, you know, you've spoken to the police, but the police don't override what the council do. I mean, in that sense, they've got a different job to do. So, you know,
but we all need. You'll be when you retire. I'm sure that you'll be assisted by a learned legal advisor. We have to deal with evidence in relation to making informed decisions, and
evidence can't be available when you're not in operation, can it?
Well, every new application,
you have to make assumptions based upon what you're saying is what you want to do, but we don't have evidence. We only have assumptions.
Well, I would say, Chair, it would be wrong to refuse this application on crime and disorder grounds when you have no evidence before you that there would potentially be crime and disorder should the license be granted. All of the evidence that I've put forward to you in relation to licenses that we've had granted elsewhere, some in very similar areas to this, some in what have been suggested as potentially harder areas to trade in, there hasn't been any crime and disorder in any of those areas. And I would suggest it would be difficult to refuse on crime and disorder grounds when the police aren't asking you to do that as your statutory experts on crime and disorder.
No, they're not our statutory experts in that sense. You know, we have an opinion. You know, the police have got an opinion, and but they do a different job. Anyway, Councillor Smith, yes.
Thank you. I just want to ask, as I've explained that there's a large addiction recovery centre about a minute's walk away, are you likely to add any sort of further conditions or change any of your operating procedures with that knowledge?
Yeah, it's something that we would always do anyway. And when you retire to have a consideration about this, there is a document that's in your pack, which is there's two documents. There's the Know Your Customer, there's the Social Responsibility and Compliance documents that are in the pack. And there is also the Gambling Commission Best Practice Customer Interaction. So knowing vulnerable people and having systems in place to assess those vulnerable people and having your staff trained to deal with that is significantly important for a quality operator. And I represent lots of people. I'm putting it to you as a committee that the actual documentation that's in here is stronger than any operator that I know, which is probably why they've had their licenses granted and haven't had any issues once they've been granted. But most importantly, it's trained through all of the staff. You can have the best systems in place you like, but if the local staff don't follow them, then you will trip up. So that will be, when the premises look to open, drilled into all of the staff. We've got a brand new training package, which is something so the staff can't actually move on to working at the premises until they satisfy, and that training will be all based on local issues as well. And the most important thing is this knowing your customer and making sure that vulnerable people don't actually get into the premises is a critically important piece. And the staff, as I've said to you, walk around the premises, they're interacting with the customers, they're constantly assessing, in line with the Gambling Commission's guidance, whether these people, the customers, should be in there and whether they're playing in a safe environment. So it's taken very, very seriously. Joe, I don't know whether you want to come in on any of that as well.
No, I think you've covered it really well. I mean, the licensing objective is taking care of the young and the vulnerable. So obviously with regards to the young, if we think somebody looks under 25, then they get challenged. They're not allowed in the premises. We also train our staff about the different types of vulnerability So whether that be a street drinker or a homeless person or an old lady with dementia, all our staff are trained to recognise that and to deal with it accordingly. You know, obviously, if somebody is showing signs of being addicted, we don't want them in our premises for their own benefit as well as for ours.
So can you just tell me how you recognise somebody is addicted to gambling?
You can't tell as they walk in, but we have a very robust system. It's called the Self-Exclusion System. And on the system is a tablet, and there are photographs of people who have recognised addiction. And all our staff have to look at this tablet every morning to recognise faces, and it will be within a 1 kilometre radius of the premises. So if that person tries to get into our premises, our staff are tasked to refuse the entry.
So I'm a bit puzzled. Are you saying people that have been found to be addicted, or somebody, and how do they find that? Are you saying because they've been arrested or what? I don't understand.
No, it's a system.
I'm trying to find out how you identify somebody who's got an addictive gambling problem.
So if I can just draw again for when you retire your attention to the documents that I've referred to already, that the staff are trained into interacting with their customers and to monitoring their playing habits and to constantly assess whether people in their premises have anything that exhibits that they are people who shouldn't be, who are playing beyond their means, is a good summary. That's the element of supervision within the premises and looking at your customer base to make sure that people aren't in a stressed environment. And all of the staff are trained in this. And the key documents that we train them on are contained in the supplementary documents that we've put through to you.
Is this page 27?
This is page 59 to 61, 93 to 119.
Sorry, I'm seeing something about guidance for customer interaction, page 37.
37.
Yeah. Your document. Not LCCP guidance.
Sorry, that is a document that's created by the Gambling Commission. So that document starts on page 35. That's BACTA's instruction on how to interact with your customers. So the LCCP is the Licensing Condition Code and Practice, which is issued by the Gambling Commission. One of those codes of practice is, as you've picked up on page, sorry, the page that you were just referring to.
37 I was referring to.
Yeah, it is a condition on the operating license as to how we need to trade. So this is something that we need to satisfy the Gambling Commission prior to coming to you for this license, that we are going to behave in a way where we pick up anybody who is potentially at risk. And we do it well. This operator does it better than any operator that I know.
We got no input into that.
Well, the input that you've got is that we've had 13 applications granted with similar representations.
That's
to
not
this.
what I said. Never mind. Never mind.
I don't follow. If you ask me a question, Chair, I'll try and deal with it.
Well, I did. I said we have no impact in it, and then you went on to say things which meant that we had no impact in on it.
Well, no, you do. Of course, you have impact in it. I'm trying to satisfy you that as an operator, this applicant sits at the top of the pile in the way that they deal with assessing vulnerable people. And Joe was going on to tell you as well that if people then themselves realise they have a problem, they can self-exclude from being able to use the facility at all. That data is stored on a tablet. And Chair, I see that you're smiling about that. It's something that
no, I'm just thinking of somebody who's got a drinking problem. Like you're saying, all they got to do is exclude themselves.
Well, it's something that the Gambling Commission push hard in relation to gambling. It works, and people do manage to self-exclude. It might be different in relation to drinking, I don't know, but in relation to gambling, self-exclusion is a very useful tool. The data is kept on tablets so that people can be assessed all the time who shouldn't be in the premises, and that's shared with other operators as well locally. So it is something that is robust. It's endorsed by the Gambling Commission, and it works very well, Chair.
Okay. Any other questions at all? Do I have any questions from the objectors?
Good evening, everybody. Councillor, Chair. I have a couple of questions here that I'm a bit confused about. First of all, I understand that they've taken great care to follow the rules that are applied to them. These rules don't seem to apply to anybody else, though, in the sense that we have children from 6 years old to 17 who frequent. We are adjacent a square that is considered a cultural centre for Hounslow and has exhibitions and all sorts of entertainment for families. This place is going to be open day and night. It's
Yeah, sorry, can you ask if you could put this into a question at the moment? Right. It's not making your case. You'll have a chance to make your case later.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. If
you ask a question that relates to the
well, he's talking about the vulnerability. He was saying that so I mean the vulnerability is also the people who are suggestionable, and you know, adolescents are very suggestionable, and this type of influence in front of their faces, I don't know. I don't know how they can consider it not to be a danger. It's the unpredictability of an adolescent, and a lot of these 17-year-olds do look a lot older than what they really are. You know, I don't know, the fact that they see these things run in front of their noses all the time. I'll wait until it's my turn to pass.
Can we phrase this as a question so somebody can answer you? At the moment, you're making a statement.
Yes, that I think that he's not taking into consideration the vulnerability and suggestionability of the age groups that will be going in front of that building every day.
Okay, you know? So that's your question, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not talking about the gaming addicts. I'm talking about passers-by.
Yep, okay. So can we, have we got any comment from the applicant?
I know that it offends the committee for me to say this, but that in my respectful submission, those are very properly planning grounds. They're not grounds for refusing this application. This is all about how the building would look, how it would seem. That's not part of your statutory test under the Gambling Act. In relation to vulnerability and children, I've highlighted what our policies are. We do not allow children in the venue, and we deal robustly in relation to assessing people who are vulnerable and shouldn't be in and gambling within the premises. Those are the issues that we are invited to deal with under the Gambling Act in relation to these premises. I have to say that we do it successfully. As a company, they do it very successfully.
No, it's not the answer. That's not an answer. That's not an answer. The appearance of the building, you will have your own publicity and everything on the external part of the building.
Well, dealing with that, we are not allowed to advertise in any way under the Gambling Act which would be attractive to children. It's a dead frontage in relation to the premises. You can't see inside in relation to where the machines are. The Gambling Act is prescriptive in its regulation that we are not allowed to advertise in any way that would be attractive to children.
Okay, that's answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, any further questions, councillors? No? Right, so I'm going to move on then. I'll now give the objectors the opportunity to make their case. So I don't know which way round you want to take this. There's two of you, isn't there, I think? Sorry, I can't hear
Yes.
you.
Yeah. Myself, Janak Modi. I work for Staffing Connect, and we supply different staff members in and around Hounslow. We supply temporary and permanent staff to different care homes, nurseries, schools, and colleges as well. The main candidates which we get are from job centers, and they are completely unemployed. And when they're unemployed, we try to get them on board, give them training, and place them to different employers. Basically, maybe it's school, maybe it is care homes, maybe nurseries at different places. Now, when we work with job centers, these people are unemployed, and pushing them hard to get back to work is very difficult. Also, during the pandemic, it was really hard. It was really difficult for everyone to come back to work. And now we have worked really hard to bring many of them back to work. And with this premises having, I mean, on the same premises having the gambling shop, it will attract more and more people to go on to gamble instead of go back to work. These people are unemployed and they are in need of money. And I really worry. I have a concern that these people won't get back to work and they will go into gambling. Apart from that, I also have concerns in terms of crime in this area. Recently, we had few crimes in this particular area, and within such a short distance, we already have 4 gambling shops opposite to this premises. I do not see how the applicant addresses the crime. Of course, the crime, he would say that the crime has not happened yet. But I would say that what happens when the crime, I mean, what will happen when the crime is actually taken place? What will we do at that time? Apart from that, I also have concern that he goes back, I mean, the applicant goes back and says that he has got all the 11 or 12 or 13 licenses approved. But what those licenses are quite different. I mean, this is a unique place. I mean, Hounslow is a different place from others. I mean, every case is different from all those other licenses. I would still strongly object to this license, please.
Okay. Right then.
May I speak now, please?
Yes, you may. Yeah.
All right. Now, I have a couple of points to make. First of all, Mr. Moody talked about the saturation. So we have a cumulative impact, don't we? We already have 3 betting shops within walking distance. I always understood that there was only a certain amount that could be within close proximity. So that's something that I find unusual. My problem personally is public safety. Although it seems to be very well covered, what I think that they haven't taken into consideration is the design and the layout of the premises that we're actually talking about. Now, this premises has a fire escape which is ubicated inside the premises of the ground floor. Now, from the security fire door, they can open and come up into the building onto any floor in the building, because that is our fire exit. Obviously, they cannot close those doors because it is an emergency exit. So the fire exit is actually in the middle of the floor of where what was the Chinese restaurant. So even if they don't use the main entrance, the fire escape is actually inside the premises. So when we come down the fire escape, we would have access to the betting shop, but they would also have access to the rest of the building. Now, obviously, if you push a fire door, if you push it up, because they cannot close it because it's a fire door. I mean, it's against the law to lock a fire door. So how are we going to deal with this problem? This is a major problem as far as I'm concerned. One, because they can't close it. And if they can't close it, that means these people can have access internally to the building. Like I mentioned, I have children 6 years old, you know, use the bathroom. I don't want strange people coming up and down the stairs. If we need to leave the building, can we be sure that that door won't be closed, because that is the exit? I mean, it's not their fault that the fire exit is ubicated right inside their floor, but that's where it is. And nobody's mentioned that at all up to now. The fire exit is not where the main entrance is. The main entrance has its own stairway, which does not have access to the ground floor. But the ground floor has access to all the floors through the fire escape. So this is something that for me is not a small matter. Security for the children, but also for the fire, and also for themselves, I should think. That I'm sure they don't want just people coming in and out of the fire escape and onto their premises. But like I said, I don't think they would be allowed to close it because it is a fire escape. So what are we going to do about that? And obviously, I have worries about the vulnerability and the susceptibility. But I mean, and my main points are the cumulative impact, because there's already enough of them around. We don't need another one. And I'd rather not have it in a building where we're teaching. And like I said, we are adjacent to Bell Square, which is a community cultural centre, you know, where every year we have wonderful exhibitions and entertainment for families. And it is well followed in Hounslow. So, you know, that's, but I'm particularly worried about the fire escape. If anybody has any answers for me.
I can only say that, you know, I may not agree with everything about being what's planning and otherwise, but the fire escape is a planning matter. Yes,
but if they are given a license to open this building, these people will then have access up into our building, and actually we would have access into theirs.
But that would be planning that would have to deal with that. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't necessarily agree with all of the things that have said they're going to be planning, but that would definitely be planning. And I sit on planning as well as licensing.
Unless they close their entrance, being as they're on ground floor, they're on ground floor.
Well, if you close a fire exit on the ground floor, then you're breaking the law.
Exactly.
So you can't, you know, there can't be. I mean, that's why it should be a planning matter. It's not something that we can deal with on licensing.
Well,
not even for other premises. I'm not, you know, I think there's a lot of confusion about, you know, these sort of premises, but even with other premises, we wouldn't be able to deal with fire escapes on there. That would be a planning matter. If it was a restaurant or a bar or something like that, it'd be a planning matter. I'm sorry, but that would be the case.
Well, apart from that, my only worry is the fact that they would have access where I have children that are minors, and you know, that's something we normally to let people into the building, we have a button system, and you can only let in who you know who's coming in. But in this case, anybody could come up the stairs. So I don't know if that's planning. I'm talking about protecting children from harm. I'm trying to avoid that anything can happen to the children that are under my responsibility. So if by having this premises means that it would increase the risk for the children, then obviously apart from them being suggestible to this type of activity, which I think is inappropriate for children to have with such close vicinity, especially as they're very young, apart from that, I don't have any other comments to make. And of course, like I said, the cumulative impact. You know, how many of them do we need to have? You know, there's already 3 or 4 just around the building itself. You know, how many do we need of the same type of product?
Right. Councillors, do you have any questions of the 2 objectors?
I don't have any questions, but I think that the planning would have to deal with the fire exit thing. So I don't think it would just be left. I think something conclusive would be dealt with by planning, but I have no questions.
I wasn't saying that it wouldn't be dealt with because it's got to go to planning. Planning, that is definitely a planning issue. That's what I'm saying. And it'd be planning that deal with it. And this application has not been before planning at the moment. I mean, it might not come up before a planning committee, but it certainly has to go before planning officers. Right. My dear, do you have any questions?
No further questions from me at this stage, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. No, the gentleman that came on, I think you talked about people going back to work, and this being some sort of blockage. Could you amplify on that? Because I didn't really understand quite how, you know, we could deal with that in a licensing position.
Right. We generally work with job center, and these are the ones who are on benefits at the moment. And for them to come out of benefits, we bring them in the office, give them training, and we place them in different places as a temporary worker, so that once they start working for few shifts, I mean few months, they go back to their permanent work. I mean, they come into a permanent placement wherever it is. So for them, we try to bring them back to work. And this particular premises will have gambling gambling shop where they will be affected. That is what I understand. I mean, these people will be tempted to have quick money. I mean, to make quick money, and may have addiction as well, and that's why they are jobless maybe. So these are just the assumptions, but of course it will be affected, and that is the main concern I have.
So do you think that they would be affected more seriously than other people being attracted to gambling?
Yes, exactly, yes.
Can you explain why you think that they would be more?
Because once a person is jobless and short of money, they would try and think of making quick bucks out of gambling rather than working hard, I mean, towards the job.
But if they were sensible, they'd think and understand that gambling is not a guarantee to make money, is it? I mean, if it was always going to make money, then there wouldn't be people running gambling businesses because they wouldn't make any money.
Yes, but generally common people won't think in that way. They generally think as if they can make money. I mean, they can twice the money with such activities. I myself used to work for a gambling company. I mean, betting shops, and I have experience of working 3 to 4 years, and I have seen different types of people coming in who were jobless and trying to make money out of it.
Okay. Right. Any other questions from the councillors? No. Okay. So we now move on.
Sorry, Chair, it's Mr. Third here. I don't know if the applicant has any questions of the objectors.
Sorry, you're right. Yeah, I'm trying to follow my notes. Yeah. Sorry. Yes, the applicant. Do you have any questions of the objectors?
I don't. I think the councillors have asked the questions that I would have wished to ask. So thank you. I don't have any further.
Okay. Thank you. Right. So we've asked all the questions. There's no questions from anybody else. Right, thank you. I now invite those people making representations if they've any final comments. Please note that you cannot raise any new points at this stage, only summarise. So I'm going to invite, let's cross out who's here. First of all, it'd be the applicant will be the last to answer. So I'm going to ask the objectors, do they have anything that they wish to sum up with? But please don't introduce new material.
Yeah, the applicant quite easily says that he has got all the licenses before and in the similar premises, but I would say this premises is quite different. It deals with children's tuition centers and as well as career center as well. And in this area, we have quite a few gambling shops already, and it will become more of a concern for the general public. I mean, the crime rate might go up. That is what I understand. Even if the police is not present here today, this is also a concern at this moment. That is what I understand.
Well, I can't speak for the police while they're not here. I can't, you know, I mean, they have the opportunity to come, but if they haven't got anything to say, they won't come.
I mean to say, if police are not present, it does not mean that there is no crime due to gambling shops.
No, it just means that they don't see that it's a problem.
I wouldn't necessarily agree to that.
Well, no, I'm not saying you would. I'm just saying what, you know, the police would attend this meeting if they thought that there was a problem that would be caused by it. They're not seeing, as far as I can, the only way I can translate it is to say that it doesn't look like they believe that it would be causing a problem.
All right.
I'm not saying I agree with them or disagree with them. I'm only saying the only reference I can infer from them not turning up is they don't believe there's a problem. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? So can I turn to the applicant then to do your summing up? And please, as I say, don't introduce any new business.
Chair, I won't. I would ask you to bear in mind the submissions I've made previously. I'd ask you to look at my setting out of the law at paragraph 16 onwards of my case outline and the concluding paragraph. Can I just talk very briefly about what the objectors have said to you, because there are some important features. So it's been referred to as another betting shop by one of the objectors. Just for clarity, this isn't a betting shop. It's very different in impact to a betting shop. And she also talked to you about saturation and a cumulative impact. That's not a relevant consideration for a Gambling Act premises. There's no such thing as a cumulative impact policy. And you're specifically guided by the Act not to deal with need or demand, that those are not relevant issues to be dealt with through this process. I think we've dealt with the fire escape in relation to planning. I would just say that the Gambling Act means that the premises need to be incapable of being accessed from another building. So they won't be allowed to have any access either for customers to go into the rest of the building or people from the rest of the building to get into this part of the building should the license be granted. That's statutorily prohibited under the Gambling Act, which is an important feature. In relation to the issue of unemployed people being tempted to come into the premises, again, I draw you to what the statutory test is. The statutory test deals with the licensing objectives of protecting children and other vulnerable persons from being harmed or exploited by gambling. And we have put in all of the policies that show how, and Joe has talked to you about how we deal with anybody who could be a vulnerable person. And it's critically important, I think, just to look at the quality of all of those documents in relation to the way this operator would behave in these premises. In relation to crime and disorder, which has been again brought up by one of the objectors, I do go back to the fact that we have agreed these conditions with the police. That's why they're not here. That's why they've not made a representation. And they're obviously aware of what's going on in the area and with other gambling premises. So in those circumstances, Chair, I would ask you to accept that there isn't any evidence before you that the crime and that the gambling would be a crime and disorder instigator. And that's what you're asked to look at under the licensing objectives of the Gambling Act. In relation to whether it's right or appropriate for these premises to sit in the same building as the objectors are talking to you, I don't know whether I've been clumsy in the way that I've tried to explain that to you as a committee, but whether it's right or wrong and the impact of those three uses being in the same building, physical building, that's what I was trying to urge on you as a committee is a relevant planning issue. It's whether it's appropriate in those terms. The statutory test in relation to this application is set out at paragraph 16 of my skeleton argument, refers to paragraph 8, which is the licensing objectives. And I would urge you that certainly whilst there is a level of not wanting this to happen, there isn't any evidence to suggest to you as a licensing committee that those licensing objectives, particularly protection of children and vulnerable people, would be put at risk should this license be granted. I would respectfully submit to you that all of the evidence is that we will do here what we've done elsewhere and behave responsibly under the Gambling Act. Chair, I'll shut up now, but those are the points that I would wish for you to just bear into consideration when you make your decision.
Can I just bring to the attention of people, somebody mentioned about the cumulative impact policy. There is not a cumulative impact policy that reflects currently on any applications. There is a change to the licensing conditions in Hounslow, but they do not come into effect for another, I think it's 6 weeks' time. And in there is an equivalent of cumulative impact, but it cannot be looked in relation to this particular application. Right, so we are ready to go off to our meeting room. Are you okay with that, councillors? Yep. Okay. We would go off. I wouldn't anticipate this taking a lot more than 15 minutes away, so I would appreciate if members that are present could remain in the room. I'll remind you that the microphones will be on, I think, and so if you are having conversations, it may still be heard over the microphone, especially if you're using rich or language of any sort. So anyway, we will now depart, and hopefully, if it does look like it's going to go on longer than 15 minutes, we will notify you to that effect, and then you can decide what you're going to do. But if we will try and keep it within the 15 minutes. Okay, colleagues, are you ready? Right, we're all here. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay.
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Right, okay. Right, we've examined what we've had to say, and with a certain amount of expedition. I mean, with a certain amount, we're you know, there's not an awful lot we can do with the conditions that are imposed by the Licensing Act. I find that quite frustrating, but we have to accept the letter of the law, and there isn't anything that we can object to in granting this license. And that's the way things are. Whether the council's new policy would make anything different in the future, we have to wait and see. But anyway, the license is granted with the conditions that were proposed. I think with the police mostly, but with those conditions imposed on there that this license is agreed. Anyway, thank you very much for attending, and I call this meeting closed.
Thank you, Chair.
Very much,
Good
everybody.
evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.